All right, I'm going to call this meeting to order. Thank you for coming. To begin this meeting, we're going to start with the flag salute. Amanda, would you lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, do we have any changes or additions to the agenda?
No, we do not.
All right.
Moving on to the consent agenda, I move we approve the consent agenda as written.
I second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That will take us to the superintendent's report.
Okay, wonderful. We are excited to have another one of our school site presentations this evening. And I'd like to welcome up to the podium Alan Andringa, who is our Director of Alternative Learning Education and Wisdom Ridge Academy. And he's here to share with us all the cool things happening at Wisdom Ridge this year.
I feel like I should push this closer to you, but I'll keep it where it is. President Jones, Superintendent Dr. Rodriguez, members of the school board, I am so grateful that I have an opportunity this evening to share with you about the successes, the hopes, the challenges of Wisdom Ridge Academy. Wisdom Ridge opened its doors in the fall of 2021, and I began at Wisdom Ridge in the fall of 2022 with 117 students. We currently have 255 students. So we are serving the needs of students in the Ridgefield community and throughout the state of Washington. And during that time, in the 4 years that the Wisdom Ridge has been open, we have kind of defined who we are, the Owls. We've refined our practices. We've seen what works and what doesn't work quite so well, and we've adjusted to meet the needs of students. We have had 317 students go through our doors this year alone, and that's who we celebrate. And that's really why I'm here this evening, is to talk about those students and those student success. Which one of these do I push? This forward one? There you go. So let me tell you a little bit about Wisdom Ridge Academy. In partnership with families, Wisdom Ridge Academy will provide personalized learning experiences that ensure all students' academic achievement and prepares them for future success. As I work with my staff on our mission statement, we wanted to make sure that we're inclusive of all of our students from kindergarten through 12th grade. Let me tell you a little bit about students who go to Wisdom Ridge Academy. We have students who are competitive athletes that travel for days, if not weeks at a time. And a traditional in-person school doesn't work for them. I have some pictures of some of those students as we go through the presentation. We have students that are hospital bound or students that are recovering from illness or injury or medical issues. We have students that work full time and a traditional school doesn't work for them. And we have students who are credit deficient. One of our students is taking 17 courses this school year. A traditional student, what typical student would take 12, 6 first semester and 6 second semester. She took 9 courses first semester, 8 courses this semester. We're working with her. We hope to get her to graduation. But if she doesn't get to graduation this year, we have 2 students who graduated in January of this year. They didn't graduate last year as seniors. They came back this fall. They worked on their work. And we had kind of a cool little, I should have told you about this, Joe, kind of a cool little celebration for them down at Wisdom Ridge. But we're so thankful that we have opportunities for students to come through our doors and continue their education. I think on my slideshow it says and I think I even said we have 316. We've had 317 students because I just enrolled a student today. Some of the things that make Wisdom Ridge unique to other ALE programs across the state is that our school works in partnership with the other in-person schools in the Wisdom Ridge Academy. So our students can go to school with us full-time or they can go to school with us part-time. I've got some highlights on there. The student growth. At the beginning, I told you at the beginning of my first year, we had 117 students. At the beginning of last year, 164 students. And at the beginning of this year, 235 students. I think that 235 is a significant number because 117, which was my first year in 2022, and 117 equals 234. So we are just over double enrollment in the 3 years that I've been there. The first year was a little bit of I wasn't at Wisdom Ridge the first year, but we were coming out of the pandemic and there was a lot of people coming and going in there at any one time. So I can't speak to what happened on that year, but I'm going to say we're doing something right if we've doubled our enrollment in that amount of time. We have served, or this time currently, we have 255 students that are enrolled. We also allow students to come in for supports. We have field trips that most other schools don't have, almost one a month. If you look up on the screen, I don't know if you guys can see the screen, but you've got the slide, but in the upper left, that's 2 of our students outside of the Keller Auditorium. We took a group of students to see Peter Pan at the Keller Auditorium in Portland. The one below that on the lower left is at Bonneville Dam. The one that Jake is covering up is at the Patch in Woodland, and the one below that is also at the Patch in Woodland. And then we also have opportunities for students to come in for enrichment. We are a multi-district school. That means that we can take enrollment from anywhere in the state of Washington. We currently have 41 students who are enrolled that don't live in the Ridgefield school district boundaries. If we were not a multi-district school, we would have to limit our enrollment to 10% of our student body. I don't know how people do that because numbers fluctuate quite a bit. So I don't know if you get over the 10%, you have to kick one of them out. We currently have between 13 and 14% of our students don't live in the Ridgefield school district. Most of them are pretty local. Anecdotally, I can tell you that the director of one of the local ALE schools, I won't say which one, asked me if we have capacity for the younger kids next year because they are removing their K-4 school. And I told them, yes, we do have capacity. So we may be seeing more students from that are kind of regionally close to Wisdom Ridge, close to the Ridgefield School District, join us next year. The other thing that we're working on this year is, oops, did I? No, I turned a page. Is we are, I'm working with my intern, Tammy Hoodenpile, to get a CTE approved pathway at Wisdom Ridge. The state allows Wisdom Ridge Academy to offer CTE courses for credit, but it does not allow us to offer those courses for a graduation pathway. So we hope to be able to do that next year. We've got everything submitted. We're just kind of waiting to see what OSPI says. Let me tell you a little bit about Wisdom Ridge at a glance. We are 100% online school. That means students can, they don't, but they can sign up at Wisdom Ridge, take the classes, do it all themselves, and never have any contact with online teachers. It doesn't really work that way because students always have some content area needs, even our high-flying students. And so our teachers, not in addition to the Ridgefield teachers that we hire, our teachers are all available online. So they all are available in Zoom. So just, I'm not sure how much you know about Wisdom Ridge. So I might tell you a little bit more than you need to know, but that's okay. We hire our K through 8 teachers. So we have a K through 3 kindergarten through 3rd grade teacher. We have a 4 through 6 teacher. We have a 7-8 teacher, and we have a high school ELA teacher, and we have a K-12 special ed teacher. All of those teachers are hired by the Ridgefield School District, and they work in the Wisdom Ridge building. We contract out all of the other content areas at the 9-12 level. So we contract with a company called Accelerate Ed and another company called eDynamic. They provide the teachers, and the teachers are very much like you would think a teacher would be if you went in before school, during lunch, during spud time, during win time, or after school. You ask a question of the teacher, they answer your question, they get you on your way, and then you go off and the next person comes in on a Zoom session. We offer in-person opportunities because our teachers work from our building. We offer in-person opportunities for students. They can come down for teacher support. They can come in for interventions for students that might be falling behind or need a little bit more in-depth support. They can come in for supervised studies. We have several students that come in just to get out of the house or get a change of pace. Most of our students who come in on their own volition, but there are some students that we tell them, you have to come in. We also have enrichment activities every Thursday. Our past couple of Thursdays, we finished our Ridgefield Youth Arts Month annual ceramics project, which kids really love. And I think that's such a cool thing because you've got kindergartners all the way up through high schoolers working in what sort of feels like a one-room schoolhouse in the throwback to the days of yore. And then, of course, we have the field trips. Students can enroll full-time or part-time. Some of our part-time students are homeschooled part of the day. Some of them go to Cascadia Tech or to Running Start, or they're enrolled at the high school or middle school. And so this is another unique thing about Wisdom Ridge Academy is that we do shared enrollment. It presents some challenges, but they're not so insurmountable that we can't overcome them. In fact, if you ever go to a track meet, you'll hear me announcing the track meet at the home meets. And I have a hard time with some of the kids saying, and there's so-and-so winning the 100-meter dash. And I say she's from Ridgefield, but she's really from Wisdom Ridge. So our students can participate, even if they're full-time with us, they can participate in all clubs, activities, and athletics at their in-person school. But there is no synchronous instruction at Wisdom Ridge Academy. There's no, like a lot of times people think that we're like pandemic learning where there's a schedule and you have to be on at 10 o'clock on Tuesdays and Thursdays because that's when 10th grade ELA is. That doesn't exist. Everything is delivered asynchronously. So the videos are pre-created, the tutorials are pre-created, the readings, all of that stuff is designed so that student, and we did have a student who graduated last year and worked a 40-hour work week, and he did school in the evening. So it's designed that school can be done 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, whenever it best works for you, with, again, the support of the online teacher. I can't make it work. Yeah, I talked to you about our in-person opportunities for students. And I know this is a little bit small, but I just want to show you and kind of point out, is there a pointer on this thing? Is that this red thing? That doesn't work either. I don't think anything on this is working anymore. But we have in-person study sessions. We have Zoom sessions several times a week. And you see the pink bar down on Thursday. That's our in-person enrichment period. And enrichment is not tied to an academic content area. We tie it to the STREAM concept, so science, technology, reading, writing, engineering, arts, and math. But it's not a place for kids to come in and do their work. It's a time for them to have socialization with their peers. We know that human beings are social people and they need that interaction. We have a fairly large percentage turnout of our K through 3 students and our 4 through 6 students, and then it drops off significantly in middle school and high school. Part of that is because those students have opportunities to interact with their peers really without their parents being completely involved in that. And we always put on our enrichment, if you look at that, you can see before and after, we always have our academic support times before and after that, hoping to capture some of those students to come during enrichment, but also come early or stay late for that those support sessions. Hey, it worked this time, or did you do that? Let me talk to you a little bit about our demographics and our students. Most of our student population mirrors pretty closely the student population of the Ridgefield School District, with a couple of exceptions. If you look at the female and male enrollment, you can see that we have about 10 percentage points more females than males. The district is demographics in that is 49.8% female and 50.1% male. So it's pretty close to 50-50 in the district, but we're 55, 45-ish. I don't know the reasons for that. I haven't dug into that, but I think it's an interesting piece of statistic. Our special education is also a little bit higher. Our district special education population, I believe, is 13.2% when I checked, and ours is a little bit higher than that. Our other populations are, within 1% or 1.5% of the district demographics. This is a slide of our enrollment.
Can I ask a quick question about that statistic?
Yes.
I'm curious if you know if that is consistent across grade level, or if there are certain age grade levels that are like making up the bulk of that difference between the regular district numbers.
I'm going to look it up tomorrow.
Thank you.
Who's got a pen? See, I'm really going to do that. Look up gender by grade. Great question. I should have. There you go. Okay. Just in case there's other answers, or there might be other questions I don't know the answer to. So let's look at our enrollment breakdown. You can see that of the 255 students, and I'm looking at second semester, 50, 60, 70. So, over half, about half of our students are in the upper grade bands. We have a lot of those students that are part-time students, so they come to us and they go to the high school as well. And you can see enrollment is fairly steady from semester to semester. Here's an interesting thing about ALE schools that nobody in here but me knows, but you will learn it in a moment. There have been 50 additional ALE schools across the state of Washington this year alone, but ALE enrollment is lower across the state of Washington, but not at Wisdom Ridge. Enrollment is growing at Wisdom Ridge. Again, I'm not sure what the reason for that is because I've not done a survey of all the other ALE schools. But I think we're serving the needs of a lot of students coming through. In fact, the 317 students that have come through is about 8% of the Ridgefield School District population. For a 4-year-old school, I think we're serving the needs of a lot of students. And I'm very thankful for the people who came before me to set that school up and saw the need that we haven't had an ALE program at Ridgefield since my first year, and this is my 12th year. So since my first year here, and this has been going on for the last 4 years. And it's a pretty robust school. But we have work to do. So if you look at our Smarter Balance assessment, it's pretty steady across the board, but we can do better than 60% of our students meeting ELA proficiency. That was last year's statistic. We can do better than 27 or 26.7% of our students meeting math proficiency, and we can do better than 40% of our students meeting science proficiency. I do want to show you the table on the right. Again, I know that's quite small, but there's a reason that I'm bragging a little bit about Wisdom Ridge Academy. In January of this school year, I got a call from OSPI and from an employee who works in a ALE data capacity. Her name is CJ Lear. And she said, I want to know what you're doing for your Smarter Balance assessment. And I thought I was in trouble. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, your scores are like off the chart. And I said, off the chart. And I'm thinking to the left-hand side of the chart. Off the chart, what do you mean? And she said, they're higher than almost any other ELA or ALE school in the state of Washington. And I said, ours? And she said, yes, let me talk to you about them. And so if you look at those, each one of those rows, you can see a little teeny writing on the left-hand side that says Wisdom Ridge Academy, and that's our row. They took out all the other schools. I could have gone in and really done a strong deep dive into there and figured out who those other schools are. But you can see that there's 4 schools that have green, and green is better than yellow, and yellow is better than light red, and light red's better than dark red. And again, we have room to grow, but we are actually in the 98th percentile of all ALE schools across the state. There are, I've got the statistics somewhere. There are 344 programs in 171 public schools and 2 charter schools across the state of Washington. So of those 344, we're in the top 4 performing schools in the SBA. So I'm going to celebrate that, even though we have work to do, because I'm just excited about that data. I can tell you that this is what I do know about those other schools that have green in them. One of them is Summit View or River Homelink. It's one of the battleground schools, and one of them is Team High School from Woodland. I don't know who the 4th one is. So I wanted to show you that, but we do have work to do. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that work that we have to do and how we think we're going to improve our scores. So the next slide, it breaks down that smarter balanced assessment. It breaks it down by category. And I'm not going to read all of those for you, but I'll pause for a moment here so you can look at that. And again, in each of those categories, they're pretty consistent. There are some that have made a kind of a significant gain or a significant drop. It's a little bit challenging to compare year to year because our student population changes pretty significantly from year to year. But any questions on this slide? I don't want to go into great detail if it all makes sense to the board. I know you've seen a lot of these. So on the next slide, it shows the data broken up into more subgroups. And the reason why, if you look at that slide, most of the cells are empty. And that's because if that subgroup does not have enough students in it, and OSPI defines that by fewer than 6 students in a given year in a specific category, then they don't put a number in there because those students are too easily identifiable. For example, we have 1 custodian at Wisdom Ridge Academy. So if we had a category of all custodians who have passed the ELA math, we wouldn't put that in there because you could figure out who that person is. But because we have so many subgroups that are empty, we are required to provide OSPI with supplemental Washington School Improvement Framework information. And so I submitted that 4 months ago. OSPI looks at 4 strands. They look at academic, the educator, which is a proportion of teachers with proper certification. They look at school climate surveys, and they look at the SIP plan. The SIP plan is the primary thing that they look at. They rank, in addition to those categories, there are other subcategories within those, and they rank each of those subcategories, and it's a very complicated, I couldn't begin to tell you how they do it, even though I went to the webinar, but it's quite a complicated process that they do when they're ranking that. And then they give you an overall score. And if your overall score is too low, those schools are identified as needing supplemental support. Wisdom Ridge Academy wasn't even close to being one of those schools that needed supplemental support. In fact, as I showed you earlier, we are one of the highest performing ALE schools.
Alan, how do you regular attendance rate? How do you, when somebody can log in whenever they want, or how do you do attendance?
That's a great question. How long do you want the answer to be? I'll make it
Kind of
quick.
short.
So really a pretty simple process. Students have to have weekly contact initiated by the student with their, we call them the program or the academic advisor / teacher that oversees their Wisdom Ridge program. So if one of your kids went to Wisdom Ridge and was in high school, they're probably assigned to Stephanie Colantino, our high school ELA teacher, and they reach out to Stephanie one time a week. We have a method that we use. I won't get into the detail of that. If they do that, they are present all 5 days that school week, or in a 4-day school week like this week, all 4 days that week. If they don't do it, they're absent all 4 or 5 days that school week. So if you think about, I was just talking about this to the student that I enrolled today. In the middle school, there's 7 periods a day. 7 times 5 is 35. So a student has to be present 35 times to be present the entire week. But if a student is absent 1 period, you're just absent 1 out of 35 periods. At an ALE school, and this is true across the state, this is not our rule, this is a statewide rule, and it's called a weekly check-in. So if a student doesn't do their weekly check-in, which only takes a couple of minutes, they're absent all 35 periods that week. And it's unexcused absence. So it can generate a truancy petition. So we have systems in place so that we don't have to go down there. Hopefully we don't have to go down that route. Good question. Any other questions on anything? So let's talk about our school improvement goals, because we do have room for improvement. So by the end of this school year, students in grades 3, 8, and 10, math scores on the SBA will increase from 26.7% of students meeting grade level standard to 40%. That's a 50% increase. We feel like we can do that. During the course of the school year, our teachers have been more intentional. This is pretty easy to do at the K-8 level because our K-8 teachers teach math. Our high school math students take math from somebody who, I don't know, they might live in Woodland, they might live next door to you, and they might live in Kansas City, and they might be doing something fun and live in Paris. So it's a little bit more challenging with our online partner teachers than it is with our in-person teachers, but we've been focusing on the weekly check-ins and the monthly review of progress. We've been focusing with our students on ELA and math, even if we are not teaching them math, if we contract that out. So whatever teacher is overseeing that student, if they're taking a math course with us, then we focus on that. One of the things that we've used this year is Math Nation. It didn't fly as when we first introduced that. It's a free OSPI provided tutoring. I'm not sure what to call it, tutoring platform. Okay. And when we first started it, it was especially our 4 through 6 and our 7, 8 teacher, they were using it a lot, and they were introducing it to students and to parents. It's not taken off beyond that as much as I was hoping, because it really took off quickly. And then it just sort of kind of got, it was just there. I think maybe because it's math and it's not a video game. I'm not sure. But we also are offering SBA test prep sessions this year. We think that there's a lot to be learned in just understanding that in, I like the way that our 7th and 8th grade teacher put it. In ELA, the prompt is at the beginning, or the question is at the beginning of the prompt. In math, it's at the end. And as a person who for years read questions at Knowledge Bowl at the high school, there's a lot of information in there. And if you don't make it clear what the question is, it's really easy for somebody to read through this entire thing or hear this entire prompt and not know what they're asking. So we feel like by getting students to come in, and we're offering 4 sessions for students to come in, we feel like we can just give some tips for our students on how to read prompts and answer prompts. We know in math, one of the first things you do is, does my answer make sense to the question? So if the question is talking about your first job making minimum wage and your answer is $4,387, that's probably not an answer that makes sense. That happens all the time in in-person school. And it happens very rarely in online schools. So we're hopeful that by having those opportunities for students to come in, that we're going to see an increase in scores, not because students know more, but because they understand how to read through a prompt and then direct their response to that prompt. We also have a goal in ELA, and our goal is by the end of the school year, our students in grades 3 through 8 and 10, you know why 9's not in there, because they don't test on the Smarter Balance. ELA scores on the SBA will increase from 60.5 students meeting grade level standard to 78%. That's a 30% increase. And again, we feel like we can do that by using the initiatives that we have, the iReady, MyPath, SBA interims. We just administered one today for third graders. So, and we did have some students that came in. And then directives to attend in-person support sessions. And I'm going to give a shout out to Dr. Jenny, because one of her very first PLC communiques that she sends out on the Ridge newsletter talked about, don't invite students to come in, direct them to come in. And we changed that practice. That came out in September, and we changed our practice in September. And we talked about, don't invite students who need additional support to come in, direct them to come in. We haven't seen a huge increase, but we have seen an increase of students coming in for that support, especially over Zoom. So any questions on any of those two school improvement goals?
Are your students doing the iReady test on the same frequency as students in the other schools?
We are. We do for K through 8, we do fall, winter, spring. And for 9th grade, we do fall, spring.
In some of the other school presentations, we've heard administrators talk about kind of how their like beginning of the year, mid-year iReady tests are reflecting some of their goals. Are you seeing that at Wisdom Ridge as well? Like to give you a sense that you are on track to reaching your improvement goals?
I'm going to be completely honest with you.
Please be
iReady
honest.
is a challenge at Wisdom Ridge.
Yeah.
We allow students to take it at home. I don't think we're going to do that next year. That was something I inherited. I'm not convinced by talking with our teachers that some of our students' iReady scores are not indicative of what they know based on their other assignments and scores.
Got you.
So I think there might be a little bit of help.
Got you. Okay. So in the other school context, when they're taking it in class, supervised on school sites, some of the other administrative teams have shared that the iReady does a good job, more or less, of predicting how kids are going to do. But in this context, it may not be as predictive.
We also have a struggle to get students to take it. Even when we say, if you don't take it by the last day, you have to come in, and then we get a hold of them and say, you have to come in tomorrow. That's a struggle.
I don't doubt that, knowing how much my children complain about the iReady test when they have to take it at school. So well, I can imagine that would be a challenge.
Yeah. We have a good number of parents who like, I just want to go back to reading, writing, arithmetic, and like all of this assessment and everything. I just, can we back up about 40 years? And I will say that we have a very high SBA attendance rate, because I maybe I guilt them a little bit. I tell them that we need to meet the federal accountability threshold. And if we don't, we can get dinged. So please support us in supporting your kids. And then I call them. And then if they want to refuse to take it, I explain to them what the process is. And then they say, oh, that's not so bad. The iReady, we have not been very successful in that challenge that we have.
Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. And I want to show you, that's another picture outside Keller Auditorium. Aren't they cute? Both of those top pictures. And then The student on the horse, she is a competitive equestrianist, if that's a word. And she's a student who came to us from Skyview because Skyview wouldn't accommodate her. She's going to be, I don't follow equestrian in college, but I will when she's in college because she's going to be very competitive. It's really cool. They shared some videos with us and oh my gosh, she is skilled. So that's the end of my presentation, but I'm ready to take more questions from you if you have questions.
I'll just ask, so to clarify with the SBA testing, they do that on site on like the Thursdays when they.
So we will do our SBA testing at 9 o'clock in the morning on May 13th is ELA, on May 20th is math, and on May 28th is science. It's an untimed test. So they have to come in. Nobody else is in the building. You can't take it offsite. It's not allowed to take offsite unless you have permission. You could do it at a community college. There's been years when Running Start students from the high school went to a room at the community college. You have to get permission to do that. Otherwise, it has to be on site and it has to be when school starts.
Okay.
We don't know when our school starts, so we just say 9 o'clock. We're pretty sure most of our students are still in bed at 9 o'clock. Any other questions?
Hey, Al, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. Hi, Alan. Thanks for the presentation. I just wanted to first just applaud you on the growth of the program, and I just want to thank you for all of that. And just Wisdom Ridge as a facility, I think you got such a special place there, and I'll say it's one of the hidden gems, one of the most neat components of our district. I'm just thinking ahead, like the next few years. If you had a crystal ball, like what are some things you'd love to see? As far as development of Wisdom Ridge, like maybe 3-5 years from now, how would you describe what you think the program could look like for our district?
Well, I would go shorter than 3 to 5 years. If I was continuing, probably my two areas that I would look at, one would be for our older students, and I would look into the what's it called, Dr. Rodriguez? The re-engagement for students that dropped out to get their diploma, and why can't I think of what the name of that? Open Doors, thank you. An Open Doors program. So Open Doors is for students that are not going to graduate on time, are credit deficient, have or are likely to drop out of school, and it's a 16 to 21 program. I'm not sure that we have a lot of students involved in that. The community college, Clark, and the ESD do a good job. I don't know where to look, so I'm looking at Jake's little square there. They do a good job with Open Doors, but I would like to explore that. The one that I would explore even further, though, is I think we have an opportunity with our younger students and a HomeLink program. And Battleground does HomeLink very well. So I would look into that and look at how to incorporate the HomeLink so that parents they want more of a say in their kids and do homeschool, but we would provide the curriculum and they would do the homeschool. It wouldn't be the curriculum we have now. It's a lot bigger than that. But those are the two things that I would explore to see if that would help serve needs of families in our community.
Thanks for sharing. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Alan, with Wisdom Ridge, and I know that it serves a lot of different families for a lot of different reasons, but I kind of automatically think as an alternative school is sometimes kind of the last step before a kid would drop out. Have you seen the dropout rate decreasing or increasing? I know we're just talking at the high school level now, but for that kid that just wants to go to work, but this is an avenue to stay in school, but do what they want to do. Is that growing? Are you seeing a difference in that area, keeping a kid just on the hook a little bit longer to get that graduation?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have two students right now that we know aren't going to graduate at the end of this year. They know they're not going to graduate. One of them has a lot of medical issues. Um, in fact, wait till you hear the story of the student at next month's Student of the Month presentation. Those students come to us, and I don't think they would graduate from a traditional high school. They don't want to be on campus for whatever reason. They think if they go back for a fifth year, everybody's going to be looking at them, but teenagers are so self-absorbed that they barely know what's going on outside of their own little circle of friends, and nobody knows. I mean, at the most, somebody would say, oh, I thought he was supposed to graduate last year, but they don't really know.
Sure.
So, but students feel that way. They're very self-conscious about that. And so, yeah, we have a number of students who, and they may not graduate from high school, but I can guarantee you they are much farther and they are much closer than they were when they came to us.
Thank you.
Alan, I have another, hopefully not too long of a question. I'm curious about particularly the younger grades. Are the teachers using the same curriculum as our elementary schools? I know there's been some new ELA curriculum adoptions and middle school math curriculum. I'm curious, if a student were to go in and out of Wisdom Ridge for whatever reason, if they were to be there for a minute and then go back to in-person school, one, I guess, does that happen? And then two, are curriculum wise, are students prepared either way, right, to be successful in one or the other, curriculum wise?
Yeah. So good question. We contract with two companies, Accelerate Ed and eDynamic. Accelerate Ed and eDynamic are two of the very few platforms that have K through 12 curriculum. They're also two of the very few that are approved by OSPI. That means that OSPI has looked through enough of their content, not all of it, there's way too much, but they've looked through enough of their content that they sort of put their stamp of approval that this content meets the standards that the state says students should be learning per grade level. So they don't go back and forth. We take enrollment at the beginning of the school year, at the semester, and for the younger grades at the beginning of the school year and at the trimesters. So the student who came today, that's a very unique circumstance. And
Gotcha.
the principal of the school talked to me about it. And this is really the only option for this student. It's either us or I'm going to sit home all day. So, but the back and forth happened the first year of Wisdom Ridge, and that predates me. But that's one of the first things that the previous director said, don't allow that to happen. This back and forth, it doesn't work because it doesn't match up, at least not in scope and sequence. While the learning standards should be met, that's true in a high school social studies class where you might have 6 different teachers teaching this one course.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter which teacher you have, and the learning may be different, and the method may be different, but the standards don't change. So, students don't come back and forth. We don't use the same content. We don't use any books. It's all developed by Accelerate Ed at the K-12, eDynamic we use for electives at the high school level.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
I see.
I could sing a song while they're getting that. Well, thank you.
Thanks, Alan. Appreciate it.
This Wisdom Ridge gig this is my 38th year in education. This is the best gig I've ever had in education. And I had a pretty good gig. I was a music teacher. But it's really heartwarming to serve the needs of students that I'm not sure they would be enrolled in a Ridgefield school if they weren't with us. They would find another online school. And we owe that to our community. We love our kids more than Connections Academy or K-12. We're invested in the community. So I'm just really thankful to be a part of still kind of the nascent beginnings of the ALE school. So thanks for letting me share.
Thank you, Alan. We appreciate the effort you put in.
Okay, next we're going to move on to our monthly financial report with Executive Director of Business Services, Paula McCoy.
Not as gifted in the height area as Mr. Endringa. All right. Well, we'll start with our update on enrollment. April, we are holding strong where we and didn't really have a change between March. Our average enrollment for the year, 4153, just a little lower than what we budgeted. And so our enrollment has been stable relatively for the last few months. That is partially due in part to our ALE program at Wisdom Ridge. When we look at our enrollment between ALE and our secondary level, we can see the movement between the two programs. So having ALE in our district is helping serve the needs of the students and giving them an option rather than having them go outside of our district. So it is benefiting our students in our district. A quick update on our audit. It feels like it's been going on forever. The auditors are wrapping up and they'll be reaching out to schedule their exit conference in the near future. I did have an update with them earlier this morning. It looks like we'll be having another clean audit report, so that'll be good to hear. They did share some minor recommendations with management that'll be shared with the board, but we can expect some clean audit reports again. So that is great to hear. I did also want to give a quick update on where the state budget is. That was really fun to listen to, a lovely presentation from Dan Steele, if you've ever heard him speak. We have a couple things going on this week. The legislature is supposed to be wrapping up their budget or their legislative session. Right now, for all intents and purposes, it looks like the legislature is going to try and get their session done in a normal year, which means by the 27th of this month. They've got some work to do on shoring up the state budget in order to make that happen. The governor's kind of given them an ultimatum to get the revenue down. The governor does not want to see new revenue to the extent that the current budget has. So they've made some concessions in the budget, which I'll talk a little bit about, involving K-12 to try to make that happen and get the state budget where it needs to be to get it across the finish line. So there's a couple bills. There's a couple highlighted on the slide, and I'm going to mention a few quickly in the presentation, but one of the bills I mentioned in the last month dealt with apportionment. Apportionment is how school districts are funded. The majority of our revenue, probably about 70% of our revenue, comes from state apportionment. So that's money coming through the state sales tax. That's doled out on a formula basis, spread out. They give us like anywhere from 6% to 12% on every month on a formula basis. And what this bill does is it adjusts those percentages in the months of February, March, and April, and takes 0.5% out of each one of those months and shoves it over into August. It's kind of like a revenue shell game with the state, because the state budgets on a July to June fiscal year. It moves the state's obligation to the next state fiscal year, but we still have to deal with our current fiscal year. So it saves the state money in their fiscal year, but it affects our operations in 2 fiscal years, if that makes sense. So that's obviously a concern for school districts from a cash flow perspective. And that's something that we'll need to plan for this next year. That would start this next state fiscal year. So that wouldn't affect us this year, but it would affect us in the following fiscal year. There are changes to state health insurance costs for school districts, the premiums going up about 10%. That impacts us for every unfunded state or every unfunded employee that we have. Most of our certificated staff are funded. It's our classified staff for us as a school district where we're going to see that costs go up. A lot of our classified staff are either funded by levy or they're just not funded. Employer pension costs. This is a temporary positive. I say temporary because the state's doing this to save themselves money. Pension costs aren't really going down. The unfunded pension liability is still going up. The state's just cutting themselves a break for a little bit to save themselves money. We're still on the hook for that unfunded pension costs. The state's on the hook. They're just lowering the bill for themselves on a temporary basis. But we'll see a little bit of a reprieve on pension costs, or our portion of the pension costs over this next year. That difference is 17%. That saves us on the unfunded units, and it also saves us on it equally. We'll see that coming through the state formula as well. I talked about IPD. IPD is the funding on our revenue that we get to fund our salaries in the district. That is the revenue that we get. That's not a COLA that we pass through, but it's really just the revenue. We have in turn set salary schedules to pay out that money that we get for revenue. But all we get in funding is that money from the state. So whatever we pay out in the end is up to us to bargain. But all you get is that state salary funding plus that inflationary factor. And we're spending quite considerably higher than the state allocation for funding for our staffing in the district. I wanted to mention quickly a couple other bills. I think I've got those on the next slide. Special education. This was one of our important issues as a school district. Special education. This was actually one of for the state school or for the school districts in the state, this was one of our larger ticket issues. The Senate was actually pretty generous initially with their budget to address this issue. Just for perspective for the public, the impact of this issue alone for this 24-25 school year, the unfunded special ed costs is about $500 million statewide for all school districts in the state. That's the impact of this. The state legislature in their original budget was going to significantly increase the funding for special ed to try to resolve that. That funding has been considerably whacked back. The updated bill, let me see, here it is. The updated bill, as of right now, does eliminate the cap still. It does adjust the safety net threshold. That safety net threshold is the cost that we have to pay out of pocket before we can access safety net. Safety net being the money that we get from the state when our costs exceed considerably above what we're funded, if that makes sense. So those high cost students, they've adjusted that in the updated bill. But they've done two additional things that I want to make you aware of. And these are, one of which is there's a good intention behind it, but it has a negative impact to funding. The other is really a bait and switch. So OSPI, with this new bill, with some of the new revenue that's going to be flowing through school districts, the state is doing a carve out of 0.6% of the new revenue to give to OSPI to create some programs to have OSPI study some of the impacts of the disproportionality of special ed and look at inclusionary practices statewide. So that's one of the things that they're going to be doing with that additional money. that means that those resources will be used by OSPI to do that additional work. It won't be stuff flowing directly to the school districts, but will be impacted by the work that OSPI is doing with those resources. So we won't be getting directly all of the resources. We'll be getting some of those resources. The portion that I'm calling the bait and switch is right now we have a carve out with basic ed. So school districts, when we get that apportionment money from the state, automatically a portion of our BEA funding gets put aside for special education students. We call that, the term is 3121 carve out or 3121 revenue. And for us fiscal managers, that's what we refer to it as. That is now moving to a flat 25%. For us, it's closer to, let's say 12% of that BEA allocation. By moving that up to 25%, they're taking more of our BEA dollars and they're just shoving it over in the SPED pot. They're not actually giving us any more resources to serve those SPED students. What the state is doing is they're saying, we're fixing the underfunding of SPED by allowing you to classify more of your revenue as SPED revenue, thereby fixing the underfunding of SPED. Use these resources, don't use them over here, use them over here. Does that make sense? They're robbing Paul to
They're
pay
not giving
Peter.
us more resources. They're just saying we can move it from one pot to the other. Total pot
Yes.
is the same.
The total pot is the same.
Okay.
If you had $100 and it used to be 50-50, they're saying 70-30. Yes. So that's part of this bill as well. So we're a little concerned with that language as well. Most districts will not be benefiting from that 25%. In fact, I don't know of anyone that will be benefiting from that. Let's talk quickly about MSOCs. MSOCs are our material supplies and other costs, so non-salary costs. We started the year, the unfunded amount for this year was also about $500 million for the entire state. We're at right now, I have the figure, the updated figure that we have this morning was the updated budget is looking at adding maybe 90 million of new money for MSOCs. Not a lot, but that's still something. They're moving on a little bit right now, and we'll take, quite frankly, any little bit that we can get. They did add some additional language, which we did talk about at the last financial update about changing some of the reporting that we'll have to do on MSOCs. They're moving away from funding at the category level. Now we're just going to get a fixed flat allocation, and then we'll do supplemental reporting back to OSPI. So they're changing how we're reporting back the use of our MSOC funding. I think I called it at the last meeting. They're doing away with their half of the accountability, but we're still doing our half of the accountability, if that makes sense. And the net change, just for perspective of between the 24-25 MSOC total and the current budget, it is the current MSOC total per student is $1,533. The new total right now is $1,614. So it's not quite, what is that, $80 a student difference? So it's a little bit more than IPD is what we're getting. And then there's one other bill that I want to make sure the board is aware of, and that deals with property taxes. That bill is two bills actually, 2049. So 2049 deals with the levy caps for our per pupil per pupil levy rate. So for a school district right now, we're capped at either a rate of $2.50 per $1,000 of assessed value, or it is $2,500 per pupil increased by an inflationary factor every year. And for us, because we have such high assessed value as a property rich district, we're limited by that per pupil, that $2,500 value figure. This new bill raises that inflationary cap to a much larger cap. And it goes up by a value of, let me see what the increase is. It goes up to $5,035 per pupil by 2032. So it's increasing the cap for districts that are in our situation where we are property rich but are capped by that current per pupil limit. So we'll benefit if we decide potentially to go increase our levy. That would obviously be a decision, that would be a future decision. But that is something that the legislature did as well. There is one other bill that I want to make sure the board is aware of as well, and that's Senate Bill 5798. And this is also dealing with levies. So this deals with the state property tax levy. So the state property tax levy appears on the tax bills of every constituent. What this bill did was unified across the state how assessors are printing that on the tax bill. Now they're making every county label that as state schools tax on the county tax bills, so that it's clear that the state's levy is for state schools. So you'll see a state schools column or state schools line, and you'll see local levy line on your tax bill. Previously, it was left up to the counties around the state to determine how to display that on their tax bills. This Senate bill prescribes and unifies how counties are to report that on their tax bills. So that's something else to be aware of. All right, now on happier news. I just talked about enrollment. We are chugging along and keeping our enrollment steady for the time being. Revenues for the district, February, we are still holding our revenues in. Community ed, though, is killing it. They are doing a phenomenal program. Mandy's been great. That program is really has really been successful this year. She's probably seen about 25% growth in that one program. So that has been phenomenal this year. Expenditures, February overall is a little bit lower than normal. We had the couple of snow days in February, which led to just one less week of payables, which is making February a little bit lower than normal. But otherwise, February was a regular month. Cash flow is following a normal pattern for this time period. MSOCs for the month of February, because we had one less month of payables or one less week of payables due to the snow days, they're down a little bit. What I will comment on, and Dr. Rodriguez will go into a little bit more depth, we are seeing as we get into the March and April with our expenditures, maintenance expenses are going up and technology expenses are going up for the district. And we'll go into a little bit more detail on those. Deferred maintenance, well, it's catching up to us. We're working on that. So those expenses you'll see go up as the year progresses. Payroll costs for February are a little bit higher because we did leave cash outs in February for sick leave. Sub costs were a little bit higher as well. We are seeing our sub costs for the district go up again. And it sounds like in talking with our HR and payroll, we're gonna probably see that now from now to the rest of the year. The leave we're now getting back into the normal for us. So I would imagine that we'll see sub costs go back up for the rest of the year. So, oh, this is my chat GPT Paula. We're embracing AI in the business office. And so I asked chat GPT, I said, create an image of a fiscal person who's presenting to an elected body a fiscal presentation, and this is what it created. So this is my chat GPT Paula. Yes. Any questions? I know that was a ton of information.
No, thanks, Paula.
All right.
Okay. Thank you for that mixed bag of news there, Paula. Okay, a couple other updates for you today. I feel like the last few meetings I've been hitting you pretty hard with federal and state government updates. And as much as for you as for me, I wanted to talk about some good things tonight. So I'm putting in some tell me something good slides in here. If you weren't aware, we had several of our students that represented our district at the ESD 112 Student Art Show. They are listed here, and these are actually linked so that you can go in. If you go into our section on our website, just as a reminder for folks, we post all of our meetings are recorded and we post the full board packet with the slides. So then you can go look at all the amazing artwork that our students created. The watercolor and ink on the right that's actually pictured here is Lily Adams, Ivy to I-Beams, watercolor and ink, and her art qualified for the state art show. There's going to be it's an online awards presentation on May 14th at 4:00 via YouTube. So anyone can sign in and see that. You can also see the students here who were selected for ESD 112 awards or ESD 112 honorable mentions. And we also had one student who received a $2,000 scholarship from the Department of Art and Design at Central Washington University for their entry. So I just really wanted to shout out our student artists. We have phenomenal artists in this district and really in all walks of art, but wanted to share with you some of the visual art that we have going on. Couple other good things, keeping our kids safe. I just wanted to give kudos to our nursing staff and particularly Stacy Regalado. She is our director of health and wellness that we hired this year, and she's been doing a great job working with our team of LPNs that serve in our health rooms across the district. And this week last week, had the opportunity to ride in the ambulance with a student to the hospital when we couldn't get the parent there fast enough. And so she met the family there at the hospital. And so Stacy's doing whatever it takes to make sure our kids are well cared for. I also wanted to do a shout out to our partners at Ridgefield PD and a thank you to Chief Kathy and her team. Anytime we've had a big investigations or concerns or reports, RPD is truly our partner through that process. And they show up, they help out, they'll follow up with families in their homes. So just really wanted to publicly thank them for their partnership in making sure kids are safe. And then lastly, on my Tell Something Good tour today, I wanted to shout out the production of Matilda. I know some of you got to go, but I wanted to just do a nice big thank you for Caitlin Etter is our theater teacher at the high school. Emily Brabant is our band teacher. Bob Meek is our choir teacher. And Shelley House is our visual art teacher, but she also does amazing like set design. There's a special word for it that I don't know because that's not my gig, but she does all the cool stuff in the background. And they are so proud of the kids. We should all be proud of the kids. The girl who played the like absolutely insane headmistress is only a sophomore. I think I got that right. So I just can't even imagine what it's going to be like to see her perform as a senior. But my husband, Tony, and I went and saw the production this last weekend. It was phenomenal. So great date night for people out there. Go to any of our productions that our musicians, our theater kids put on there are phenomenal. Maintenance department. Last time I shared with you some updates, and we give a shout out to Chris Griffith, who is here tonight. So I'm going to shout out him again because he's doing a lot of work with our maintenance and operations team to get a lot of things moving forward. We, as you know, did a big survey of our staff, particularly our classroom teachers, to find out what's going well, what's not going well, what are the concerns in their workspaces. And we are continuing to collect boots on the ground information from any classrooms that were rated a 1 or a 2 via our community volunteers. So a big thank you to that individual as well. Our water quality, we had just gotten that report when we had our last board meeting. So just again, reiterating that we finished our retesting. We had 25 additional fixtures identified. We've shut off some unused fixtures. We are working on the replacement process for others. And then you should know that some things are going to actually require like getting into the wall and doing some plumbing work. So we're working through all of that. We also were able to get roofing assessments done. It was really professional roof assessments that were basically donated to us. So that was very kind. We've completed those assessments at Union Ridge and South Ridge. The high school is coming up. And then we have some issues with our roof at our newest building, which is Sunset Ridge View Ridge. So we're looking at potential warranty applications. So working through that with all the folks that we have to work through that on. I wanted to give you a little bit of an update on deferred maintenance. So the funny thing about deferred maintenance, it's kind of like the legislature. We just kick the cost down the road. Unfortunately, when we do that for a long time, we end up with really big bills that come due all at once sometimes. So we're doing our best to take care of what we can, take care of things that are safety issues or really pretty urgent, honestly, maintenance issues at this point, and then trying to figure out how do we cycle through and plan for these expenses over time where possible and when possible. So I just thought I would share with you the things that we've already had to address this year. So we had to do an elevator repair at the high school. That was $15,000. That was a must do it now to remain ADA compliant and make sure students can access their classrooms. We had more recently at Southridge a rotted soffit. That's the like thing that overhangs on the roof. See, like my technical description there. And there was a concern that it may like fall on someone's head. So that was $9,022 to fix that. With our lead and water and plumbing remediation, the round 1 improvements that we did this fall was just over $15,000. We wanted to really ensure the safety of our students and staff. So when we did retesting, we tested everything. That was $22,000. And now we're doing another round of remediation and then we will retest again. So those costs are yet to be determined. We have had an ongoing issue at Union Ridge with drainage of our playground. We have a section that is regularly flooding, making it unusable by our students. And when we had folks out to figure out like what is happening here, basically we found out, well, we have to actually install all of the drainage. And I don't explain this very well, so Chris could explain it way better than I could, but like have to build all this stuff into the ground so that the water actually goes somewhere and doesn't just sit there and flood. And then when we get that installed, we also have to repair the catch basin because the water's had nowhere to go. And so now that is falling apart too. So now we get to do both of those things. So the estimate for that is about $27,000. We are working on moving forward with that because it's important that we have access to our full playground for the 700 plus students who attend that campus. We also have been looking at our stadium bleachers, particularly the student section, in their enthusiasm, and they stand on their feet for the entire football game and they jump up and down with the cheerleaders. It causes a little bit of wear and tear. So we really actually are due to replace all of our bleachers at the stadium, but we're going to start with the student section. There are 4 sections. So we'll do the student section this year. It is just shy of $18,000. And then our goal is to replace a section each year to stretch that cost out a bit. We are, as I already mentioned, still conducting the room by room assessment and following the maintenance survey that was done. And so we anticipate there's going to be other things that are going to come out of that that will not be able to wait. So far to date, unplanned maintenance expenses of $106,000 and $433 dollars. But hold on to your hats, ladies and gentlemen. So deferred maintenance anticipated costs as we finish out this year and move into next year. So I mentioned the roof conditions assessments. Union Ridge Building A has basically rated at what is called failure. That's not a good rating to get on your roof. It's a 5-level rating system for roofing, and failure is like in the red. We need to do something and do it now. So I've shared with you here the estimated replacement cost for 30 years. So we take it all off, fix it all, do it right, to be honest. 2.2 to 2.45 million. I put plus tax because when you're talking about millions of dollars, the tax alone is a significant cost. So I just want folks to know like that gets tacked on the top of that. 20-year 1.9 to 2.15, a 10-year 815 to 915. We have asked them, and so we do have some quotes. If we don't fix the roofing over the play areas, and by that I mean like the big play area, and then between the old building and the special education annex, there's like a little covered area where kids kind of hang out under there. So if we opted not to do those and the special education annex, knowing that maybe over time we may or may not be using that particular campus, that saves us 100 to 500,000 depending on whether you pick the 10, 20 or 30 year. So that is a potential option for us. The Southridge Building A was rated as poor, which is level 4 out of 5. So, and then you can see the replacement costs here. Really, the change there is in the size of the roof. So we have some estimates there for you for the 30, 20, 15, and 10 year. The 30 year in both cases is a full replacement. The 20, the 15, the 10 is really, it's a repair and extend. It's to do some fixing up to buy us some time. If you choose to do the 10, the 15, the 20, like once that's done, in most cases, then you've got to fully replace it the next time. So we are, again, kind of determining what's the long-term financial plan for this. We are working on getting the assessment done at the high school. So those costs will be on top of these costs. And then we're going to do everything we can to get the roof issue at Sunset View handled through warranty, because truly that building's not even 10 years old and we should be able to get that fixed. And then again, we anticipate other projects pending completion of the on-site one-to-one data collection. So the intent is, as we're gathering that data, is that we may find other projects that we could hire, we could bid out to do. So for example, I know that in some of our classrooms, the carpet is really old, and there are places where it kind of, if you ever had an old house, or once your kids are right as they grow, they do this to your carpet, but it starts to bubble and you need someone to come out and like stretch it and make it tight so it's not a tripping hazard. So we may see, as we gather this across the district, hey, we might need to hire someone who specializes in carpet installation and repair, and they could do that wherever we need to get that done in the district. So we're just, again, kind of figuring out what might those projects, or how might we group some of that work to be able to tackle it, both financially and given the staffing. So that's a lot of money. I thought I'd share some pictures because those are right worth a lot. So this is the Union Ridge. So this is the condition rating that I shared with you from red to blue, failed, poor, fair, good, excellent. I am feeling strongly that this can't wait. So I've directed Chris and Paula to really like, let's figure out how we get this done. I don't think we are going to be able to wait on this. And we're working with vendors in an effort to be able to do this over the summer before school opens next fall. It is the lowest rated. It's also the most expensive project. So it's just in the big scheme of things, we need to keep this in mind that we're not going to be able to wait for our capital levy funds that were designated for this to roll in. We're going to have to move ahead sooner. Here's just some pictures for you. But you can kind of get a sense as you look at like the upper left, like all the different colors. That's not actually a good thing. You can see where they've kind of taken out a core and how dirty it's kind of in there because water's gotten in there. This is like we're growing trees up there. This is not this. I've heard of green rooftops, but that's not really what we wanted. You can see like where patches have been done and are peeling up. Yeah, so I'm going to recommend to the board like we're going to need to address this sooner rather than later. Southridge, again, rated not as bad, not at the failed level. So we maybe have a little bit of time to think about this one. But I wanted to share some pictures with you. So the damage is not as significant as Union, but you can see like in the upper right, like it's starting to come apart in places like where we've patched, it's like cracking again because the water continues to sit in those same places. So you can see kind of what's going on there. And then like in the lower left, where there are some wood panels, like it's basically rotten through because of the water damage. So fun stuff. Construction updates. I wanted to just give an update on where we are with elementary number 3. So a reminder, we all learned all about the deform process as part of our levy conversations this last fall, but the deform process is what it takes for us to get funding through OSPI's School Construction Assistance Program or SCAP funds. When people talk about matching money, remember this is the matching money. It doesn't actually match dollar for dollar, but this is the only state funding available to school districts for any construction projects. The odd numbered forms are the forms that we submit. The even numbered forms are what we get back that basically say you're approved to go to the next step. So wanted to give you just kind of a layout of where we're at. We completed the D1 and received back the D2. We completed the D3. We got back the D4. That was right around the time of the election. We have submitted all of the D5. We're just waiting to get back our D6. Our D7, we have submitted the majority of that. And then obviously we're waiting on that approval as well. We have to have the D8 before we can do the bid opening, which is scheduled here in about a month. So we're anxiously awaiting those approvals. And then once we do the bid opening, we'll share more additional information with OSPI, which will be via the D9. And then they would send back the D10, which allows us to begin construction. And then D11 and D12 is done at the very end of the project. So that would be quite a bit down the road for us. Also, just wanted to share with you, I know if people have driven by and they're thinking, why isn't there a school up yet? Well, there's a lot of steps that it takes to work through. So The design phase, we already had a design for elementary number 3, which was a great place to start, but we did some value engineering. We looked to reduce cost, as you'll recall, in that levy process as well for capital levy. And so there was some redesign a little bit that needed to be done. This also includes getting all of the construction documents ready so that construction companies can give us an appropriate bid and estimates of the cost. We also had, because this design was done several years ago, there were code changes and updates regionally, statewide, et cetera. So we've had to make adjustments to meet those in order to be able to move forward with approvals. The land use approvals is kind of the next thing, and SEPA, which is around environmental protection. We were able to carry that forward. So those were obtained previously, and we were able to use those for this moving forward project. Construction permits, we've submitted for all of our permits, our grading, our engineering, our building permit. Also approvals through county health, the fire district, Clark County Regional Wastewater. So there are a lot of folks that have to approve everything before we can actually start construction. We got back our fire district approval this week, so that's great. But working through like with regional wastewater and other things. So just a lot of paperwork and conversations and getting things filed before we can actually begin construction. We also are already into the bid process. So we have been advertising. The pre-bid meeting is scheduled for today. I think I missed it. I was in bargaining. So, okay, it was today. I didn't get to go, sadly, but that was an opportunity for contractors to go out and see the site and meet with the project managers and architects, and if they had any questions as they're preparing their bids. Bids are due May 15th. And then that's a very exciting day because it's rip open all the envelopes and see what the bids are and cross our fingers. And then we will be bringing that to you as a board at the second board meeting in May. I can't believe we're getting there. So in about a month, we'll be coming to you with a recommendation and seeking your approval to award the bid. Once that happens, right, then we get to move into the construction phase. So June of 25 through August of 26. The other thing I just wanted to call out was what they call in the construction land owner activities, where the owner is the district. So we need to select our playground equipment, our furniture and equipment. There's IT installation that we do, delivering installation of like all the furniture. We have staff moving. It's not like once you get occupancy, and then the first day of school. So this gives you a little bit of a timeline on some of those other things that happen alongside the physical construction process. I thought this might also be helpful as we're thinking about construction and also the significant maintenance needs that we are trying to tackle at this point. Clark County has a school advisory council. They meet about twice a year. It's really Clark County advising us. It's not us advising them, just to be clear. And so they shared with us this spring, which was earlier this month, the annual new housing data. This collected data is the full year, calendar year 2022, 2023, 2024. And then as of December 31st, 2024, they also let you know how many homes are under construction and then what is under review. So this is sort of their lingo, but NHC is a new single family home. MBH is a new mobile or manufactured. MFM is a multi-family residential, so that could be apartments. ADU is an accessory dwelling unit, which I've heard other people call the mother-in-law suite, right? So this is like we're adding something on that's kind of an additional living space, but it's on existing property where there's already a home or some other living space there. So you can see these are just for Ridgefield. This is not Clark County. This is Ridgefield School District geographic area. So you can see where we were at, like pretty big uptick there in 2024, but then in construction, it's dropped down quite a bit. So they are seeing the same thing we're seeing, which is that it's slowed, right? And obviously, we take that into account as we do enrollment projections for students. Also wanted to just highlight, because the other piece here is school impact fees, and like we're putting all the impact fees we have at this point towards that new school. Our hope is that we'll continue to see some revenue coming in with that, because we know we have other construction that needs to be done. But this gives you just some stats from January of 2023 through March 28th of 2025. So they're kind of working on financial quarters. So that's through the first quarter of the 2025 year. And you can see here how many we have had that were basically qualified, and then we received that impact fee. They are looking at, as a county, adding a provision around alternate methodologies for calculating the student factor used in impact fee calculations. I believe that that is a fancy way of saying that they're going to take a look at, will this development potentially really have students? So for example, if we were going to be putting in a 55 plus community of homes, then they may have some new methodology coming that would say, realistically, those homes are not going to have school-aged children, and therefore the impact fee is going to look different. So things that we definitely want to keep an eye on. They also are looking at removing the requirement to update calculations annually. And this is scheduled for the Clark County Council hearing, sorry for the typo there, with the biannual code updates, which happens at their meeting in June of 2025. So this, I think, is also helpful just to see, like, with permits, what's coming. So we've got a lot under subdivisions. There's some plats in review that could end up with quite a few homes. So we'll be watching that data closely. And then because we love a road closure in Ridgefield as every day as I drive past Costco. So I just think it's good for us to talk about this now, because it's coming and it's going to have some impact for all of us here in Ridgefield for a long time, potentially. So county road projects, there's improvements along Northeast 179th Street corridor. You can kind of, it's the aerial shot, and you can kind of see where we're talking about, but they are looking at starting work, or they've already started work kind of on Northeast 50th and 179th, but this summer starting work on 29th and 179th. And eventually there's going to be an I-5 interchange and a whole bunch of improvements. So they are anticipating a 2-year road closure in this area. It's not too far from Southridge Elementary School. So we anticipate there may be some challenges with transportation, just having to rework routes with our K-Whirl Transportation Cooperative. And obviously for families who live anywhere near there, if you're taking your kids to and from school, let me encourage you to put them on the bus, because I think it's going to be a bit of a challenge down in that area. And then I think this is my last one. Just wanted to provide some labor management updates. So we have been working regularly with our leadership, with both REA and RCA, and on some occasions, even our coaches group. But specifically, I wanted to talk about REA and RSD because we have a full contract opener this year. So we have been meeting regularly, at least once a month, if not more often, to just talk through concerns. We were able to negotiate an MOU or memorandum of understanding regarding overload pay to reduce the tracking and paperwork burden on teachers and other frontline staff. So they automatically receive overload pay now. They don't have to turn anything in, track anything down, get any signatures. We have really partnered together to support staff as we went through our reduction in force process. I don't know that I gave you the updates on that this time, but we still at this point have just one classified employee that is still like in the running for some positions. And then on the certificated front, I believe we are down to one person in sort of that permanent subbing role that I've discussed previously. So that's pretty amazing. We have done everything we can at the district to take action on employee concerns throughout this year. So it feels like a long time ago, but it was really exciting when it happened. We returned our Chromebooks to carts in classrooms for our first through fourth grade students. So our elementary children no longer take computers back and forth every day, which is saving on backpacks and backs and unsupervised time that kids have their laptops. So that was a big win. We've made some updates to some of our transportation procedures to ease some concerns for some families and for some staff. We have had broader staff involvement this year in development of our instructional calendar. So previously there was a committee structure, and this year, like we put the survey out to everybody and really crowdsourced the feedback, not just from staff, but from families as well in the development of the calendar that the board approved. We are addressing maintenance issues, and there's a lot. So this is going to be a long-term thing that we're working on. And I think I don't know how long it's been since labor leaders have really been involved in hiring of administrators, but they were really integral to our hiring teams for our new positions. And then most recently, clarifying expectations around win time, which is intervention time at our elementary. So both REA and the district have really taken the stance this year that we're going to solve things as quickly as we can, and we're going to solve them when they come to us and not wait for the contract opener. But we are now at that point where we're in the contract opener. So just a little bit of information, reminder for the community. The current contract sunsets August 31st of 2025, which is this summer. This is the team. I want folks to know who is on the bargaining team. So a big thank you to Liz Stamp and Dave Dennett in particular. They are taking time away from their students in their classrooms to be at the table with us. Annabelle Torres is the lead bargainer from WEA and Uniserve. I'm sitting at the table. A shout out to Kaylin Heath, who is in the audience, our Assistant Director of Employee Services, and Josh Halliday from Porter Foster Rourke. So we have a great team of the six of us. We have all been really preparing and gathering information from staff, from union members, from management, from principals, right, to identify areas for revisions. And we had our first session today. We have another session tomorrow and two more next week with some additional dates reserved as needed. And we had a great first day. So it was a really productive day. Everyone's, I think, spirits are really good, and just excited to work together to tackle some challenges. We are going to be doing some communication, so I wanted folks to be aware of that, some joint communications. And so we partnered today to say, what do we want to share from today? And Joe Weigart, our communications director, put out some messaging just on our Facebook and then on our webpage. So when we bargain, we will just post an update on kind of what did we do that day so that folks can stay in the loop. It can be scary to kind of like not know what's happening. And it's really important for us at the table to be able to kind of workshop ideas and work through things. And so we're not planning to share like a ton of details, but at least let folks know that things are going well and that we're getting some stuff done. So looking forward to getting that taken care of. And that was my last slide. I do want to also just introduce you to Luke LeCount, who is our new Executive Director of Human Resources, who's joining us at our board meeting tonight. So we'll get to know him over the next year as well. And my husband is here, so shout out to Tony.
Thank you, Dr. Rodriguez. That takes us to board communication. Let's start with Jake. If you have anything.
Hey, y'all. Yeah, can y'all still hear me?
Yes.
Hey, Tony. Hey, Luke. Sorry to miss you, my absence in person, but I'm traveling for work, so appreciate everyone's flexibility. But I'm glad to hear that Luke's in the audience. Want to welcome him. I think it's such an integral role for Dr. Rodriguez and her cabinet, and I think as we grow as a district, just excited to have someone with his expertise on board and joining and joining the district. So welcome, Luke. Excited to have you. I was also able to attend Matilda on Saturday with my wife, and it was just a really energizing, fun performance. Shout out to Maddie and Margaret, who are the two stars of the show. To Dr. Rodriguez's point, I was shocked to see that Margaret was a sophomore as well. Saw her in the fall play, and she's got a bright future ahead of her. So it was just a great show. Shout out to everybody that put that on. And most of you know my walking route daily takes me through the Rourke most days, and I just want to give some kudos to Brad and Manny over there. There's a lot of fresh paint and a lot of great landscaping being done amongst the building of the field house, but the Rourke area looks great, and just appreciate all they do to make it look good for our community. And that's all I got tonight.
Thanks, Jake. Amanda?
There we are. I too saw Matilda, and I brought the playbill so I wouldn't forget, but just outstanding show. I try to go to all of them, and my kids declared it was the best ever, and it was better than the movie, and it was just phenomenal. So great job to that team of kids and teachers. And then also happy Earth Day to everyone. Let's see, kind of on Earth Day adjacent, I wanted to invite everyone. I've been enjoying being part of the Friends of the National Ridgefield National Wildlife Refuge, and they are doing their annual celebration of volunteers and members, but everyone is welcome to come and take a tour of their new facility that's a community nature center. And it'll include kind of the design for the nature play center. And it's they are seeking input from educators to join a kind of a group to outfit a classroom that's going into that center that's going to be kind of an education classroom. So they are hoping to kind of partner with the schools a little bit more to get some educators on board. So if that's you, reach out to me, and then come on May 4th is May the forest be with you for the celebration and a little tour of that facility. And then I was just gonna say I don't have a office hours yet, but I've been really fortunate to just kind of run into people as I'm everywhere in town, and I'm hearing a lot of really great things. It must be sports season because I'm hearing a lot of commentary on the sports world. And we had a lot of kids try out at the middle school level for track and field, something like 180 kids, and it has to get cut down to 100, and that doesn't feel great. And so I'm hoping that as a school district, we can kind of find a place for kids to be and scoop them up so we don't have to cut any kids in sports, especially at those middle school levels. So maybe that's community ed, maybe it looks like something else, but I've been hearing that from a few different places and out in the community. So feel free to reach out to me with all your sports questions. And again, I'm really looking forward to the school improvement plan and the committee that we're going to get together with that in May, and just kind of building a good team that's looking to the future for our district and making it into something, even better than it already is. So that's it.
Thanks, Amanda. Amber?
Thank you. I had my monthly coffee talk last week and had a handful of people come and chat with me. Dr. Rodriguez, thank you for giving updates on elementary 3 progress. That was something that came up. People kind of wondering what's happening. So thank you for that. And I know we've talked about having kind of a regular update from here on out. Particularly as we're working through the parts that aren't as visually obvious externally, that work is being done and things are moving along. So thank you for that. Also got some questions around our public comment process for our meetings. And I think everybody received an email from one of the people that came to meet with me. But I would love for us to take a look at that policy as we're doing our policy reviews, just to make sure that it's as easy as possible for folks to come and share their thoughts with us. There have been a couple of times when I've seen people in the audience who I thought, gosh, it really looked like they had something they wanted to say, but then maybe they weren't, I don't know, I sort of made up, maybe they didn't know they needed to sign up ahead of time. So just wanting to make sure that we're doing what we can to make it easy for people to share their thoughts with us as a governing body. I got to do some fun things around the district the last couple of weeks. I got to go to the boys soccer game last week where they won against Washougal. It was a really fun and exciting game. It was senior night too, so there were a lot of families out and about. Heard from someone I ran into there a question about our Volunteer of the Year award as a district. If we're going to do that again, how are we going to figure that out? And was provided with a suggestion of somebody to acknowledge. So when we're ready for that, remind me that someone had one thought, a nominee to offer for that process. Also got to see Matilda. It was the thing going on in Ridgefield the last 2 weekends. I think almost everybody that I know texted me to tell me how great it was, even though I had nothing to do with it. So just amazing work. I'm always blown away by the band students who are playing the full score. I did some theater when I was growing up, but we did not have live music at our high school. So that was really phenomenal always to see. And next week, is it next week? May 7th? 2 weeks. I can't keep track. It's a busy time of year. May 7th, from 6 to 8 p.m., Brett and I will be at Three Peaks, hanging out and available to chat with anyone who wants to come and talk with us.
Thanks, Amber. I think I was the only one that didn't go to Matilda. So I did miss out. Their performances are always awesome, and I regret missing it, but I was out of town. I will definitely catch the next one. Yep, May 7th. Come join us. Come talk to us. Come meet us. And that's all I have. Donna.
Nothing from me tonight. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Donna. Okay. With that, we do have public hearing. So
So Paula McCoy is going to share a little bit of information for the first one, which is a revision to the 24-25 school year capital projects fund budget. And then after she shares some of that, then you'll need to open the public hearing. And then we can go from there.
Oh,
okay.
All right. So I am going to talk about what is part of the capital budget revision that will be part of a future board action tonight. I'm going to start with why we are proposing a budget revision and what role a budget plays for a government. So the budget serves a couple purposes in government. One of those purposes is it serves as our plan of activities for the government, our plan to implement either policy or implement goals of our organization. And it also serves as our legal basis for spending money in government. Oftentimes, as the federal government, you hear they need to pass a budget to keep operating. It's true for the federal government as well. We need a budget in place in order for our ability to spend money. And while the board has approved a budget for this fiscal year for the capital fund, there has become a necessity with the passage of our levy and with the future construction of elementary number 3 for us to request the board to increase the budget authority for the capital fund so that we can account for those construction costs that were not part of the original budget that was adopted. Otherwise, we can't spend any dollars beyond that which was approved in the original budget, because the budget is our legal authority to spend in law. So a quick picture of what the changes are in the budget. So revenues, we are accounting for a increase in revenues in the budget. On the revenue side, there is another board action that is proposed later on in the evening that contemplates a potential sale of property, I believe. So that would be the increase in revenues that's in the budget revision. And then on the expenditure side, we are reflecting increases in expenses for elementary number 3 and a potential property purchase that could come later on in the year. And then we're projecting a lower ending fund balance as we're spending down the impact fees for elementary number 3. So that is a quick summary of what's included in the capital projects fund. Looking at the projects individually that are part of this year's capital projects fund, and also with the extension, some of these projects are already complete. The freezer project was wrapped up already at the beginning of the year. New elementary number 3, this is what we're projecting to spend between now and the end of the year on that project. We've got an amount in there for some of the deferred maintenance projects that may come up between now and the end of the year. The HVAC project, which is for the most part done already. The sewer or sanitary extension project, which is already in the wrap-up phases, and then a potential property purchase. Those are the projects that make up the budget extension. And then a quick overview of the expenses in proportion to the budget, the largest ones being the elementary and a potential property purchase. And that is the budget. Does the board have any questions about what's included in the extension? Okay.
I do not.
All right. Well, that was pretty fast.
So I'm going to open the public hearing on revision to the 2024-2025 school year capital projects fund budget. This is the time we'll open for public comment. I do 3 calls. So first call for public comment. Second call for public comment. Third call for public comment. Okay, I'm going to close the hearing. We are open for board discussion at this point.
I guess I do have a question about the revenue side.
Yes.
For particularly the deferred maintenance projects and the roof. Was that, so you talked about the roof needs being very, very urgent, at least at one site, and then there was some in that for deferred maintenance. Was that the same? That line item in your summary was also.
So potentially that could be for a roof project, but you asked a question about the revenue. That's a great question. So how could we potentially fund a roof replacement? So the board actually created a maintenance reserve several years ago in the capital projects fund that currently has $1.5 million in it. That would be available to fund one of these large maintenance projects. Now, depending upon which option the board would go with for the roof replacement, there would potentially need to be some additional monies because we can't use impact fees to fund those projects.
Right.
We do have available some additional revenues that we could transfer from the general fund because we have we've had a lot of vacant positions that we didn't fill this year. We've had savings in other areas of the budget. We could transfer some of those savings over to the capital projects fund to cover the delta if we needed to, depending upon what option the board decided to go with for the roof.
And then how would we replenish that maintenance reserve?
So what we would need to do, and the initial budget that we are working on drafting would have right now it's got $250,000 built into it. We would need to have a dedicated funding source each year to build up that reserve over time. And ideally, that's how a maintenance reserve is supposed to be funded.
That makes sense. And then the levy funds from the capital levy come in January of 26.
Yeah,
Is the beginning of that.
February.
April. Oh,
March.
because we don't get the money monthly. It's like
most likely March and April.
okay. And then those funds wouldn't be able to like pay us back. We don't give ourselves our own short-term loan. No. Okay.
Yeah, those funds would most likely be used for the
elementary.
school.
Sure.
I want to just be explicit in stating, like, because we've taken, I think, a conservative approach this year with our enrollment estimate, because we took the conservative financial approach to not fill positions until we better understood what we might need going forward. That's the only reason, honestly, that we can cobble enough together to tackle this so soon. But it does feel urgent to me that we address it. And yeah, there's some other things that we're spending money, that we just have to tackle now. We can't wait for the revenue to come in from that capital levy. So we also, as you know, are waiting on the bids for the new construction of the school. And so at that, like, we've done our very best with estimation and worked with the experts. And it's also an unknown until we have that, and then we'll be able to make a better longer term plan.
But as of right now, we do have $1.5 million in our maintenance reserve.
I'll just tack onto that. It's kind of that same question then. So if we have 1.5, that would be only enough to do the 10, like the lowest level of roof repair at Union Ridge. And if we did both at the same time, that would maybe be enough to do the 10-year at both of the elementary schools. Is that correct?
We'd have to go back to the cost, and we can spend more time looking into the options, but I will tell you after reviewing that I really think we should do a new roof at Union and go the 30-year route. If we go the 10-year route on either, the product that they use is not something you can add to again. So it's a Band-Aid. And given the level of deterioration at Union, and looking at the cost differential now, Southridge, when I look at the difference between 10, 20, and 30, it's more equally split in terms of what that cost escalation is. And so we may want to consider a 10 or 20 at Southridge because we're not paying excessively more than, like, kind of for each 10-year segment. But when you look at the cost breakdown for the Union Ridge project, it's significantly more over time if we do some short-term things and then a big long-term fix. So I suspect that we're going to eat through the reserve and then some.
It's a lot to weigh.
Yeah. I was just thinking back to the reports that we had for all the things that were going on with all the schools and how many of those items were below that threshold of percent, whatever that was determined to create it as like failing. There was a lot of parts, so it's weighing that, fix a roof, but if the rest of the building is also failing, then what's the responsible thing to do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Great question, though.
All right.
Okay, so if there is no further discussion, we're going to move on for the next public hearing to determine the propriety and advisability of selling real property. This is in relation to Clark County tax parcel number 181223000. By way of just some description, we have been looking at the feasibility of other property for a future potential elementary number 4 or middle school, intermediate school potential, or just middle school number 2. And this existing property is bordered on 2 sides by the Battleground School District. So placement of a school there would put us really splitting neighborhoods, having a lot of folks living very near the school who would not be able to attend that school. It's also a fairly small parcel of property. And so looking at this initial piece, which is a public hearing around the sale, but want to be upfront that the concept is we have another piece that is about double the acreage with a limited difference in the cost between the sale and the purchase. Happy to answer any questions the board may have.
All right. Okay, without any questions right now, I'm going to open the public hearing to determine the proprietary and advisability of selling real property, Clark County tax parcel number 1812230000. Is there any public comment? Second call for public comment. Third call for public comment. Okay, that closes the public hearing. It's open for board discussion.
I've heard over the couple of years that it feels like a couple of years, year and a half that I've been on the board, some, various challenges with the current site, the opportunity to double the acreage for a reasonably comparable amount makes sense from my perspective. And my understanding is the potential new property, it's also adjacent to a currently owned property by the district, so would give us a larger site of congruous land to work with in the future, depending on the needs of the district.
I think I just wanted to ask also the money that was spent to put in the sewer. Can you explain again how I think it was 1.8 million was put in for the sewer, and then how much of that will end up getting back, if you know approximately? But again, it feels like going from doubling the size that's available so that we could do much more. It feels like a really smart idea.
Yeah, so I believe we are slated to get back about $1 million, which is really like cost share coming back from the county for that work. And then long term, I don't know whether we'll be able to access any as people hook up to that or not. Sometimes that depends on the timeline of development. The other piece to consider is that the property we're looking to potentially sell, depending on the number of homes or that go into that space, there would be impact fees at that time that under current expectations that those funds would come back to us as well. So while potentially combined, we're looking at a sale at a particular amount and then a purchase at a slightly higher amount. When you figure in the future impact fees that are expected, it is basically a wash to double the acreage. And as Director Baker mentioned, it is the other property that we're looking at is adjacent to property that we already own as a district. Also, it is still in the south of the district. So I know that that's been a prior concern of the community, that we have some of our schools situated really kind of in the four quadrants of our district. And so it would allow us to expand more in the south of our district in the future.
And still also on the east side, correct?
It is east of the freeway. Thank you.
Yeah, I was around when we bought this property, and I'm happy to be selling it. And because it opens up the opportunity to be in a better piece of property, better located next to an already owned property. So it makes sense. It makes sense to try to keep those two facilities as close to each other as possible and gain more acreage. So we are moving to old business.
Well, public comment, I lied.
Oh, sorry, there, public comment.
We have one public comment tonight, and as a reminder, each speaker will be given 3 minutes to speak. And time will be displayed on the screen with a 30-second warning given. Our speaker is via Zoom.
Hi there, can you hear me? Okay, my name's Rochelle Simmons, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Ridgefield Public Schools Foundation with some updates. Since last month, we received an external grant in the amount of $1,500 from OnPoint, and that grant will be used specifically to promote accessibility. As I mentioned last month, we allocated a portion of our budget this year specifically for accessibility and SEL, and we haven't had an annual budget for that in the past. Our 2 senior scholarships that we have closed on April 15th. We had a lot of applicants, and we will review those and announce the recipients at the senior award ceremony in June. We have 2 scholarships that are still available, our Tanner Trosco Music Scholarship and our Teen Driver Scholarship. We have more grants available to apply for than we ever have before. Our innovation grant, STEM, art and literacy, and we still have our general funds for any applications that don't fit into another category. And then just yesterday, we posted 2 new grant applications on our site, one for SEL and the other for accessibility. We are going to be holding a matching fundraiser for our high school Knowledge Bowl team. They are competing in the National Quiz Bowl in Atlanta at the end of May. So we are holding a matching fundraiser April 28th through May 4th, and we'll match up to $5,000. Last year, we received $6,300. The community donated $6,300, and we matched $5,000. So we hope to, be able to raise approximately $10,000 with $5,000 from the community and $5,000 that we match. On April 30th, we are having a fundraising event at the Red Robin and Battleground. All day long, Red Robin is donating 20% of sales for people who mention the Ridgefield Public Schools Foundation. And those are dine-in and to-go. And again, the date's April 30th. And last, on July 21st, is our 15th annual golf tournament. And the link for golfers to register is live now. We posted that on our Facebook page, and we're looking for golfers. And that's all I got. Thank you.
All right, now that takes us to old business. That's no problem.
We don't have any old business tonight.
So we're moving to new business.
We are. Okay, so item 11A. These are the first two are tied back to the public hearings that were scheduled for this evening. So 11A is to approve resolution number 2024-2025-11, revision to the 24-25 school year capital projects fund budget. And you've already heard about this information from Paula McCoy. We would recommend the approval of the board resolution adopting the capital projects fund budget extension.
I move that we approve item 11A, resolution 2024-2025-11, as written and presented.
I second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That takes us to item 11B, approve resolution number 2024-2025-012, sale of real property that we just discussed. The property that we are looking to put up for sale is located at 18216 Northeast 29th Avenue. Again, it borders other districts, and so we believe we can support a better long-term plan and serve the educational needs of Ridgefield's growing community by the sale of that property, which would allow us to purchase property that would better meet our needs. It's recommended that the board approve the resolution and declare this property surplus and allow it to be publicly posted for sale.
I move that we approve item 11B, resolution 2024-2025-012, sale of real property as written and presented.
I second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm flipping past all of the appraisal that's in here. So, okay, the next one is item 11C, approve the updated fee schedule associated with 4260P, which is the procedure tied to policy 4260 on use of facilities. We've talked about this previously when we updated the policy, and so now we've worked through the companion updates to the procedure, and it is required for the board to approve the fee schedule. Just by way of reminder, we have narrowed down in some ways the groups. So under the policy, we now have just 3 groups for facility rentals: school and school related groups and other government agencies for whom there is generally no charge for the use of facilities, nonprofit organizations, whether they are for youth or adults, and also for non-district youth athletics and activities. Even when those are not considered to have full nonprofit status, those are group 2, which is a reduced rate. And then group 3 is our commercial enterprises or for-profit activities, and they have a higher rate. So this was really to address concerns that we had heard from community members, parents who coach outside athletics activities, and to try to come up with a fee schedule that would provide the lowest possible cost for groups that are truly serving our own students here in Ridgefield. This is, I believe, just, oh no, it is to approve. So we're recommending that the board approve the updated fee schedule as presented.
I move that we approve item 11C as presented.
I second.
Any discussion?
I had just a question about when people use the facilities and they reserve them through the Facilitron. Do they have, is there a timing of when the reservations become available? Like, is it each month, or can they reserve all at once each year, or, and how will that be communicated?
Oh, that's a complicated question, Director Ronstadt. Typically, it's about once a month, but part of this is because we have to wait for the athletic schedule for our district, for our high school athletics and our middle school athletics. Those schedules are not done that far in advance. We would love, myself and the person who has to do the facilities work would love if we could do this a year at a time, but we really do have to wait for those season schedules to be developed. So as we go through really the fall, winter, and spring, there is typically another opening once we get those of the remaining available time. So it's not a year in full. We're trying to work towards closer towards that. But typically it's going to follow the school sports seasons around when there's going to be another opening of access.
And will you maybe somehow communicate that in a newsletter or something when the access becomes available? I'm just thinking of people outside of the community that might be looking to reserve and then don't know when there's going to be availability to reserve. So
Yep, we
kind of
can
give people a heads
certainly,
up.
yep, work on getting that communicated. We do, as the board is aware, have some agreements with particularly Ridgefield groups. So like Little League and the Soccer Association, Golden Grads. So we have some groups with whom we have executed specific agreements. So they get the second bite of the apple after our own athletics. And then anything remaining is what is opened up beyond that.
Thanks for clarifying that for me.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
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 Okay, that takes us to 11D, which is a first reading of revised board policy number 3205, sexual harassment of students prohibited. It feels like we were just here. So in July, we updated this policy to comply with the 2024 federal Title IX rule updates. And then due to recent federal action, Title IX rules have now gone from the 2024 version back to the 2020 iteration. And the updated policy aligns with the recently, again, updated WASDA model policy. This is just first reading, but basically this is taking us back to the policy before we updated it in July. And so you have the track changes document, but I'll bring this back to you at the next board meeting for approval. I am happy to answer any questions at this time. Okay. Hearing none, I'll move on to 11E. Here first, a read of revised board policy number 3131 in district transfers. This policy has not been updated since 2007. It was in place to provide guidance for families who wish for their student to attend a non-boundary school in the district that is not their home's geographic attendance area. In our district, this really is mostly just applicable to elementary students because we have one high school and one middle and one intermediate. So there's not really other places to go other than Wisdom Ridge. So historically with this policy, we have asked families annually to reapply if they were a Southridge student who wanted to attend Union Ridge or vice versa. And then since the opening of Wisdom Ridge Academy 4 years ago, we've also asked families to basically reapply every year, even if they were staying at Wisdom Ridge. So we worked this year to try and make this a little easier for our families and basically say, we are going to assume your kid's going to stay at the school they're at, that they're going to roll ahead. And only when you want to make a change do you actually need to fill out that form online. So this would update, the update to the policy is to do some revision based on WASDA model policy changes because it has been almost 20 years since we've updated this as a district. And then we have updated some language to just address that basically we'd allow kids to stay in that school until they matriculate to the next level. This is a first reading, so we'll be bringing this back to you for a vote at the next board meeting, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Could there be a chance that you would need to revoke somebody's transfer status? Outside like disciplinary?
Probably not. This is really based only on people who already live and reside within our district. So this is not affecting folks who maybe live outside our district and are on a choice transfer into our district, where at some point we may say we don't have space. We also reviewed the data that we had with the request to and from Southridge and Union Ridge, and it is almost a 1-for-1. If we were seeing that 50 kids every year wanted to leave Union and go to South or vice versa, that might be something we'd have to have some conversation about. How do we want to manage that? But given that it's almost a 1-for-1 at each grade level, we felt like we had the capacity to be able to honor family choice in that way. And Wisdom Ridge, because it is online, we don't have the same worry or concern around brick and mortar space. So we're able to really allow kids to go there as they see fit. And we would always welcome them back to their boundary school if they decided they want to return to their boundary school. So I think in general for families and for students, transition's really hard. So we'd like to be able to allow them to stay once they've been approved. And again, it's not a forever, unless you're at Wisdom Ridge. You could be there from kindergarten all the way through until you graduate. But in most cases, kids are going to move on to a new level and kind of start that process over.
I like the idea that you couldn't be granted a transfer in district and then have that revoked, just because for especially the littles at elementary school, that's such a formative time and that's such an important community. So I like that. And I appreciate the idea that families don't have to remember the paperwork every single year. And so that it seems like the decision point is really at the approval of the in-district transfer. Like, can we accommodate that move rather than every year reassessing and having a kid get juggled back and forth? I do have a wondering about the redistricting that we are going to have to do when we open a third school, and if we may need to revisit this, because I can imagine people wanting to not move. I know there's some neighborhoods, your neighborhood, that have been moved multiple times with all of the growth. So that is just a wondering I have in terms of how this might impact that process, because we will have to be saying the school boundaries are going to change. So I guess I'm not sure about being able to commit to that kind of longevity if we're redistricting the whole, reboundering. How do you say that? Redrawing the boundaries.
Yeah.
I'll choose different words.
Yes, it's okay.
Redrawing the
Good.
boundaries.
Yeah.
For elementary in particular. So that's just something that is like a question mark. I'm not sure if that means we wouldn't update this policy, but it does make me wonder how this would impact that process when we get there.
Yeah, I think it will be something for us to consider if we have to do something different with this due to the opening of the new school. But maybe not necessarily. I think until we get there to doing the redrawing of the boundaries process. We also have a big decision ahead of us in the fall around fifth grade, and if we're going to be returning fifth grade to the elementary or maintaining our intermediate middle school model. And I know there's a lot of conversation out in the atmosphere about this question. So I just, again, want to take the opportunity to reiterate that no decisions have been made about fifth grade, and that when we make that decision in the fall, and then start the boundary process, we'll have some conversation. It's not uncommon in other places when schools are being opened that we allow students to finish out if they just have one more year, for example, rather than moving. A little bit different here if we pull fifth grade back in, because then every student would potentially have at least 2 years with fourth and fifth. So there's a lot to think through. Also for our staff, there's a lot to think through around the staffing and transfer of employees. So there is work to be done around that. I believe we probably have some other policies around boundaries and that process by which that we do that. So we may need to revisit this. And I think would like to still hopefully move forward. We're just really trying to find ways at Central Services to reduce the burden both on frontline teachers, but also on our parents, to reduce the forms, the paperwork, the requirements that feel like they could be barriers for families. And they have other things they need to focus on.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
Takes us to executive session if we have it tonight.
I don't think we do.
We do not have executive session, so this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Night, Jake.
Like big action tonight. Hi. Thanks for being here. Yay.
Some George's suggestions that if it would be helpful. So I'm always looking at work smarter, not harder, save money where you can. If the carpets in the school district are glued down